right, you ready?
Sure.
Hey, Brooke.
Hey.
Hey. You're co-hosting again.
Yeah, I'm enjoying it.
This is fun. We had Ian Simkins on. You set that up.
I did.
Yeah. Introduced me to him as well. His Instagram is a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
He is a Jesus is perfect theology guy.
Yeah.
And pastoring a church called The Bridge in Nashville. And his Instagram is, you can find him at Ian Simkins, but lots of fun stuff there. We dove into The Table. It was a very taco-themed podcast because it was very relational, community approach to how we understand the good news. So we talked about the table and what that means to him. He's been kind of teaching on it. We talked about being the beloved of Jesus, John's thoughts about being Jesus's favorite, and then how that practically plays out in our lives.
Yeah. We talked a lot about the Sabbath and the how and how to love your neighbor and wanting to be able to do that and love yourself. And that dynamic of the two of those things, which I thought was really good. And really just focusing on just this idea of the things that we need to be more of who we are.
Yeah. I love the practical tools, which is in your wheelhouse, as we kind of got into, even talking the Enneagram for a minute, which is always fun to do with you because you actually know something about the Enneagram, and so I enjoy those conversations. But yeah, I think this is going to encourage and bless a lot of folks. I think there's a lot of practical insight in this conversation as well. Hey, we have a conference.
We do have a conference, and it's official.
We are doing a Rethinking God with Tacos conference in Charlotte, August 15, 16, and 17. That's a Thursday night, Friday night, and Saturday night. And
who's going to be there?
Yeah. You want to say it?
You can do it.
They probably know by now, but
maybe
it's fresh for us. Baxter Kruger, of course, is going to be there. Dub Alexander, Felicia Morel, you're going to be there.
You're going to be there.
I'll be there. Michael Wallace is a good friend of mine. He's leading worship. Excited about that. And
it's going to be such a great time.
Yeah. So you can sign up on our website, afamilystory.org. It's going to be right at the top of the website, as well as joining our mailing list. You can do that at afamilystory.org as well. And I would recommend doing that just to be updated on the conference, also on everything else we're doing, the podcast. I'm working on a new book that's going to be releasing the end of this year. Speaking engagements, opportunities to connect with ministries. Go ahead.
I was going to say, and the thing is, it's like, for some reason, you cannot make it in person to the conference.
Right. Thank you.
That is going to be live streamed.
That's right.
It's going to be online, and all the details will be on the website.
Yes. So you can stream it if you live in New Zealand.
Yes. Okay. Joe, you can watch us.
That's right, Joe. Because some of you live in New Zealand and in the UK and in Australia and South Africa. So
all over
the place. You can stream it. And so sign up for our mailing list at afamilystory.org. That's also where you can give. We're grateful for that. This is listener supported, and I'm so thankful for all the ways that you guys partner with us doing that. We still are having great conversations over on the Facebook page, God with Tacos, Instagram, Rethinking God with Tacos, where there's lots of reels, and I am occasionally doing some live streaming there.
Yep.
You can also find Brooke, Path to Wholeness.
PathToWholeness.org.
PathToWholeness.org.
New merch just dropped.
Too. It's really
so
good. Yeah. You want to talk about it?
I've gotten a lot of feedback on it. Everyone's loving the little babies with "Made Whole" written on it. So
you were made right the first time.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, right. That's what Drew says.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right, Drew Neal. This has been fun. I think I've hit all the beats. Guys, Ian Simkins was a treat. I think you're going to enjoy this conversation.
Yeah, go follow him. He's got a lot of nuggets of wisdom that he drops almost every other day.
Yeah. And join us either streaming or sign up and join us in person.
In August,
In August in Charlotte at the Rethinking God with Tacos conference.
Yes.
All right. Talk to you soon. All right. Our conversation with Ian.
It's over.
Here it is. We're done now. Ian Simkins, man. Brooke is co-hosting with me today. Brooke is actually who introduced you to me. You're famous through Instagram.
No.
Yes.
No.
Well, that's how I got to know you. That's how, and man, I absolutely love what you're doing. You're pastor in the Bridge. You're in Nashville, and I'm excited to introduce you to the tacos people. Share a little bit about your story, a little bit about what you're doing now, how you got there, and we'll go from there, man.
Yeah, totally. I mean, first off, brother, thank you for the invite. I'm totally honored. What I've learned about what y'all are doing and your community, man, is really special. So I'm grateful to be here. I'm a recovering homeschool kid from Detroit, Michigan. Oldest is 7, so there's a lot there. I went to Chicago for my undergrad and just never left. I had an amazing school experience at Judson University there. Got my first job. Met my wife, who was born and raised in Chicago. So I'd been there for almost 20 years before getting called down here to the Bridge just 3 years ago, March of 21.
Yeah.
So the height of all the world's craziness. What a great time to pack up your family and try something new. But we have absolutely loved it here at the Bridge, and the team here has been incredible. I've never lived in the South before. Never lived in the Bible Belt before. So I feel like I'm learning them as much as they're learning me, but it's been a beautiful experience, man.
Man, Nashville's a cool town.
Yeah, it is.
And I know a little bit. At one point, you thought you were gonna be a surfer and a musician. I see there's a whole lot of music going on at the Bridge, a whole lot that you're focused on there. That's some of my background, so I'm intrigued by some of what you're doing there. But hey, you're the oldest because you said 7 ruffians. I read your bio. It's homeschool. Yeah. You're the oldest though.
I sure am. Yeah, six boys and a girl. So the youngest has never known fear in her entire life. That is.
Oh, yeah, I bet.
We love her.
She's tough. Then. And you got 3 boys. I saw that as well. Beautiful, dude. As I said, I've gotten to know you through Instagram and poking around in there, constantly impressed with what you're running at. But
thanks, man.
Rethinking God with Tacos, man. What we do is we endeavor to have a better thought about God together than the last best thought we had about Him. And it's I refer to myself as a relational theologian.
Love it.
You know, that if it doesn't fit in the context of my marriage, if and how I parent and how I love my neighbor, if it isn't practical in that way, then we're doing it wrong. And so a whole lot of what I see and what you're doing looks like that. Before we hit record, you actually were talking about some of the things that are burning in you right now, the gathering around a table, that taco theme. I think it'd be a good place to start. Share a little bit about what you're running at right now. That you use that phrase, gathering around the table, and I want you to expand on that.
Yeah, I love that. First off, I love the title of practical theologian or relational theologian. I think it was Karl Barth who said, "Do theology with the Bible in one hand and a newspaper in the other."
Yeah,
and that imagery to me has always just made sense. Like I'm right there with you. I like academics. I like pontificating, but today I'm a practitioner. If this doesn't translate to my actual family or my actual neighborhood, I'm going to have a hard time.
Right.
I'm going to have a hard time being too excited about it. So this table idea had been burning for a while. There's a phrase that I had learned years ago, and it where it actually originated is there's been a number of different guesses, but the phrase is that every table an altar. And I love that idea that every meal, every cup of coffee is this deeply sacred interaction charged with the grandeur of God, if only we would actually have eyes to see it. So it's been kind of click-clacking around in my brain for a long time, but specifically here at the Bridge for probably the last 2.5 years, we've been walking through with our elders in particular, thinking about the future of the bridge and our trajectory. And it's kind of one of those things that when we really dove into it and how central the table was to the ministry of Jesus, you kind of can't unsee it. It's like Tim Chester wrote this book called A Meal with Jesus, and he said in the Gospel of Luke, Jesus is either at a meal, leaving a meal, going to a meal, or preparing a meal. Like if you're not reading the Gospels and getting hungry, you're not reading it right. Like, and it's kind of like anything, I guess. Once you take a deep dive, you're like, how have I not seen this? Like I've been preaching for almost 20 years at this point, and so for us, we didn't want it to just simply be like a cute sermon series or like, oh, wouldn't it be nice? But like, what if our like main missiology was ministry around the table, and the phrase that we've been using at church is the gospel at every table, and that's not just dining room table, by the way. Like, that's at every boardroom table and ping pong table and cafeteria table. The thing that we've been kind of putting before our people is, what if we simply prayed, even just quietly to ourselves, Lord, at this table as it is in heaven? Like, what would it look like for the inbreaking of the kingdom of God right here and now? And it's been so cool just to see the creativity of our community. It's already gone in directions that I don't think I ever could have anticipated or suggested. Like everyone has a table. It is one of the great unifying aspects to the whole notion. Like, man, whether you're rich or poor, urban or rural, like we all have a table of some kind. Yeah. What if that was the main vehicle by which we like showed the love of God to other people? And I think like when I survey our landscape, maybe it's similar where you're at. The three big issues that I tend to hear over and over again are division, distraction, and isolation. And we, unpack all three of those for another 10 hours. But I think all three of those are met at the table. Like we're in an election year and people are more divided than ever before, and everyone assumes that they're some of their political beliefs. We have arguments in the comment section and call that a conversation. It's not. We have people that drive directly into their garages and go to their privacy fence backyards and they don't even know their neighbors, and people like the loneliness stats every year are they're not trending in the right direction. So, man, what if we actually took seriously like reclaiming the table as maybe the most sacred piece of furniture in every home, in every church, in every building? I think that could really change something.
Come on, man.
It's good.
I love what you're talking about. You're removing the platform, if you will. Yeah. And inviting everybody. One of my pet peeves growing up in the church was when the pastor would give a profound and maybe I know a little bit about the first time you preached. I think you were 16, right? And you knocked it out of the park, right?
No, no, I did not.
Yeah, I heard that story. But 20 years later, the pastor gives this great message, right? And you're sitting there, and then he applies the message, and it gets really small when his application is, hey, you can participate in our children's ministry.
Yeah, right.
And don't get me wrong, that's a beautiful ministry. That's not what I'm saying. But I would sit there and go, man, it's got to be more practical. It's got to look different than just on a Sunday morning or a Wednesday night. And so I love what you're talking about, because it's an invitation to step away from the platform or hierarchical structures around how we do community and actually invite everyone to the table. I have this phrase that love is a circle. And I love to take the last shall be first and the first shall be last to articulate what that means. It's, if you think about it in a linear way or in a hierarchical way, you're just going to get dizzy. Yeah. But if you realize that love is a circle, then it says, well, sometimes it requires I go last, sometimes it requires I go first. Whatever love looks like in this moment, and that's that table that makes room for every voice. I think that's an awakening we're in the middle of. I know that the listeners of this podcast are hungry for that. They're a little confused with some of the institutional models, but aren't interested in throwing the baby out with the bathwater, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's what that's been tricky to navigate too, because I certainly don't want to ever sound ungrateful. I love preaching. I love preaching more than I thought I could love anything, to be honest. So it does sometimes feel counterintuitive for me on a stage, say, hey, it's not ultimately about a platform or a stage or a microphone. I mean, the early church, well before the church had websites and slogans and branding, had the table. They had, they called the love feast, these agape feasts.
Come on, man.
It was temple and table. You had large group gatherings still. I'm not anti that either, but I'm right there with you. And I try to articulate it as often as I can. Like, I think Sundays are really important, but they are the push, not the point. This is not the end all be all. This is like, this is where we look each other in the eye and encourage each other. And if you feel like the bottom's dropped out or you're coming unraveled at the seams, we like breathe life back into each other. And then we send ourselves back out into our actual neighborhoods, in our actual jobs where they actually live, work, and play. They have access to people and conversations that I don't have access to. And I think that's been the most exciting is, I would love to see a lot less like church growth strategies that say, grow your church from 100 to 1,000, and a lot more that's grow your church from spectator to disciple. Like,
come on, man.
That to me is far more interesting. Like, man, what if we actually saw ourselves as sent people and didn't see people as projects or enemies or neighbors to be loved? Like, we have so elevated like confidence and certainty in leadership, and I would love to see an insurgence of like curiosity and humility.
You're speaking my language.
I just think that would be a welcome shift, particularly for a skeptical world that has seen a lot of pontificating at best. And a lot more just like, man, help me understand your story and what brought you to to this moment in your life. Right. And I think that could that would be a big deal.
It's beautiful.
Yes, I love that because you can't operate in curiosity and contempt at the same time.
Yes, that's good.
So, and another way to word it is like you can't be a scientist and a judge at the same time.
That's right.
So I'm going to opt into being the scientist. I'm going to opt into being the curious one because I'll tell you what, I don't know anything, and the older I get, the less I really do know. And it's not just it's not just this cliche phrase; it's the actual truth.
Yes.
And I think part of what you're saying about the table that I really love is people don't know how to be in community when they disagree.
Exactly. Yes.
It's already hard enough when we do agree.
Yes. Yes.
But then when you throw in disagreement, it's like I don't know what to do with you anymore.
Yes.
I disagree, and I don't know how to have this, whatever this is anymore. I don't know how to do this anymore.
Right.
And that's hard. That's hard for people.
Well, and I think if I'm being charitable, I understand the value of tribalism. I think people are trying to make sense of their stories, and people are constantly seeking some kind of safety. So like for me to know who's in my tribe and who's not, if having the most charitable read. But I also think it is inevitable that posture is going to create echo chambers, confirmation bias, and an enemy making at all turns. So like like my brother's a lawyer in Detroit, and every election year he has this big old party at his house on election night, and the only way into the party is you have to bring someone with you that voted differently than you.
Oh my gosh, I love
that's amazing.
And he's really honest about it. He's like, man, most people don't leave having changed anyone's mind.
Right.
But you now have like a flesh and blood person and a story to put with that belief rather than just like, oh, I can't believe they voted this way or they voted that way.
So good.
And I just am so proud of my brother for having that kind of imagination where he's like, man, I want to be realistic, but I also want to have some prophetic voice here in this context that says we might be closer than you realize, and even if we're not, a real person with hopes and dreams and longings, and you came to these conclusions for a particular reason. And I don't know. You're exactly right. What we try to say at the Bridge is drawing from Acts is you can't be a witness and a prosecuting attorney at the same time.
So
there's a reason for that. So like if we're to bear witness to the goods of God in the world, that's pretty hard to do if we're like mostly concerned with like demolishing everybody else's value systems at every turn.
That's so good. That's so good, man. I love that take on tribalism too. There's so much grace for everyone in their journey.
Sure.
And where I participate fully in tribalism, like all in on a Sunday, is between 1 and 4 o'clock when the Buffalo Bills play. I am all
You
in
had to
on
bring
it,
in the
man.
Bills. You always bring in the Bills.
I'm here for it, man.
I participate
They
hard.
make it
I'm
in.
a part of that tribe. It's an echo chamber. All the things you said apply, and I fully embrace it. But I actually make the joke that the only time that I participate in the law fully is on Sundays between 1 and 4.
That's good.
There's good, there's evil, there's right,
Yes.
there's wrong. I can fully engage in it. So, but I'm being funny, but I love the grace for the journey, and I love what your brother's doing. Brene Brown has a quote that my wife said first, and I need to give her credit for, because whenever I don't do that, she's like, you know what, you heard that from me before Brene made it famous.
Yeah.
But everybody's doing the best they can.
Yeah.
And when you grab a hold of that grace, it really does empower you to be in the room with another voice, because we haven't, in my lifetime, I don't know that I don't want to say that it hasn't happened in my lifetime, but we are in a very dualistic moment.
Yeah.
Where
right.
there is where we've made agreement how we gather, and I think also at the same time there's an awakening taking place within the church, certainly within my echo chamber, if you will, certainly within the world that I'm connecting with, where there's a rediscovery of who Jesus is.
Yeah.
And therefore a rediscovery of who we are.
Yeah.
That's my way of pivoting to one of the posts that I read that resonates with me, that you've got pinned, because I'm convinced that there is a shift taking place in a rediscovery of who Jesus is, almost a Christocentric hermeneutic that the church is awakening to. And to the extent that we become convinced in who he is to the extent that we actually begin to know who we truly are.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And so you've got this thing that it's one of my favorite. John's my favorite. And John is one of the things that I love about John, as he refers to himself 3 times, is the one Jesus loves.
Yeah.
And we have a thing in our house. My kids know, they all play the game. Because love is a measureless revelation, they'll ask me, am I your favorite? And I'll say, yeah, 100%. That's how love works. You're all my favorite today. Wow. And what John was bringing us into is a revelation of a one-of-a-kind discovery of being the one that he loves, this relational. So you wrote, one of Jesus' closest friends on earth was a disciple named John, identified in the gospel as the one Jesus loved. That always struck me as funny until I thought about it a little more. If John were to be asked what his primary identity is in life, I don't think he'd reply, I'm a disciple, an apostle, an evangelist, or an author. I think he'd say, I am the one Jesus loves. Bro, I'm getting chills. What would it mean to come to the place where you draw your primary identity in life, not as what you do or have achieved, not the titles you hold or the tasks you accomplish, but as the one Jesus loves? You continue on, but I don't want to read the whole thing. I want you to expand on that a little bit. And why is it pinned at the top of your amazing collection of insights and thoughts?
Thanks, man. That's very kind. Thank you. I think for me, what has been so interesting about the Instagram thing is it's mostly just me trying to work out my own thoughts. Like it is me trying to develop a sermon, seeing if something resonates, or it's following a sermon where something resonated that I didn't anticipate resonating. But underneath all of that, though, is like what I feel like the Lord is showing me and like working on my heart. And I don't ever want to present in any avenue or any capacity, hey, I've arrived and I'm here to bestow some wisdom upon you. It's always here's what I think this is pointing to, and I'm still stumbling along the way, but I wonder. The T. Niles quote, like, evangelism is just one beggar telling another beggar where he found food. Like, that's what I'm interested in. And with John in particular, man, I somewhere along the lines bought the lie, hook, line, and sinker, that I am only as valuable as the sum of my accomplishments. And I can look over my shoulder now and say, oh, that's what drove me to incessant workaholism and constant performance and always being on. Like that's what was beneath it. And I was, we say it a lot here that like, man, alcoholics get treatment, but workaholics get applause. Like there's a lot of accolades on the road to accomplishing and doing, particularly in the church. And I'm not even knocking that. I just know that for me, that whisper got louder and louder that like, oh yeah, you're only loved and lovable if you're producing. And the moment that you're not, that all goes away. So I was really compelled by John, because I don't even know that I would have the confidence to write myself in that way. It feels like hubris. It feels like, oh gosh, John, like the one Jesus loves. And that, and the more that I've sat that, the more I'm like, oh, I think he was just enraptured by grace, mercy, forgiveness, love in a way that I just I'd never really considered before, man. And, Henry Nouwen talks about the three main lies of identity are, I am what I have, I am what I do, I'm what others say about me. I'm like, yep, I've bought into all of those at some point in my life. Right. So what we try to keep in front of our people is the truest thing about you is that you're loved. More than your accomplishment or your greatest failure, because both of them are problematic. Plenty of people will walk around, with their chest puffed out, like I'm loved because of all these great things I've done. Conversely, it's like I could never be loved because of these horrible things I've done, or even these things done to me. And I'll say, no one has the right to define you except the one who made you. And he says you're loved, and now, he was the first, for me at least, to talk about the most significant thing, particularly he was writing to like leaders in the church. The most significant thing that leaders in the church need to learn to do is to lead from a place of belovedness, because when we don't, we do a lot of wounding of other people. And I think I've had enough closed door conversations now with people that on the surface or online, we're pretty barbed and pretty mean. And you get beneath the surface, you're like, oh, you are wounded, man. You're shooting all these arrows everywhere else, and you're this guy online and this guy in business and this guy in your marriage, ultimately, because you have this wound that you've not actually taken time to heal from. And that's given me so much grace, I think, for the person that I look at online. I go, oh, I unfollow. You know what I mean? Like that. Yeah. I just remember like, oh man, what would it mean for this person to live out of their belovedness? I think it would look a lot different. Maybe
that's good.
Know it,
Come on, man. Come on.
That's good.
Yeah, at the 1 John 1:14, we love because he first loved.
That's it.
Yes. To me is that Rosetta Stone of if the gospel, if everything comes down to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, strength, love your neighbors, you love yourself, then we love because he first loved. And so what John is coming into is that measureless revelation. I know well what you're talking about. For me, and growing up in the charismatic church, desperation was the high watermark of spiritual maturity, right? And so, like I had to prove, and I had this call of God and ministry, and so Jesus did all this stuff. And after 33, I was like, man, I must be a failure, And I remember when I got the shift of realizing that Jesus got, this is my son, whom I love, with him I'm well pleased, before he did any of the stuff he's famous for.
That's right.
And what if he was growing in the confidence, just like John, that I am his favorite. And from that place, he does all the stuff. Yep. I mean, now we're not talking about a desperate, insecure journey. We're actually talking about living out of this place of union, out of this place of trust and friendship and intimacy. It's responsive instead of constantly trying to prove and earn. And
that's right.
I love that, man. I love that. I'm sorry, I got on my own preach on that, but I'm yes-anding you. That's what you're supposed to do in this stuff.
I love it. I'm here for it, man. And I think what you said is significant too, because there is still work involved. Like the invitation to partner with God in bringing shalom, bringing healing to a world. Dallas Willard, I think, put it best. He says, grace isn't opposed to effort. It's opposed to earning. It's not that we don't like it. It's when we think that we're doing these things in order to earn some kind of favor, acceptance. That's where things really, really wonky. And I think that that shift in order was like mind-blowing to me when I finally got it.
Yeah, it's a responsive way to live.
Yeah.
And it's for me, suddenly I realized light doesn't have to do push-ups. Love doesn't have to do push-ups.
Right.
Love is actually it is active. It is responsive, though. You're actually operating out of this revelation of how much you're loved. Yes. And so you can't even help but begin to be responsive, which really leads to a second quote that I have. I don't want to step on Brooke if you've got something you want to.
No, go ahead.
But I feel like this is a good setup for the practical reality of being loved, what it looks like practically in your marriage, in your parenting, in how you love your neighbor. Loving our neighbor. See, I'm pretty good at this here. Loving
You're getting it.
our neighbor is not the same thing as simply not hating them. You know which one I'm doing now?
Yeah.
Okay, oops, let me go back. And this begins with presence. Presence is the medium of love. Man, I love that. Love is not merely the absence of hate. Love is the presence of action, which is what you were saying. It compels us to seek the well-being of others. We can't love our neighbor as ourselves and be indifferent to what harms them. Right, and this is, here we go, man, right or left, progressive or conservative, Republican or Democrat, or libertarian, or green, or if your theology doesn't lead to a greater love of God and neighbor, something is wrong. I'm going to keep reading because this is so good. We got a few more. As followers of Jesus, we seek out ways to treat people better than they deserve, because in Christ, that's how we've been treated. Come on, man. We got what we could never deserve. Never have we received more preferential treatment than when a sinless rabbi hung between two thieves. There's a lot I don't know about loving your neighbor, but I think knowing their name might help.
That's so good.
You could expound on that for a minute if you'd like.
Sure. Yeah, I think, gosh, where to even start?
Right.
I do think it has become fairly popular to speak of love in sort of an abstract sense. But I don't think we're called to love abstract people. I think we're called to love actual, real life people. It goes both ways. You know, when we hear verses like, for God so loved the world, a lot of us are like, sure, yeah, I know Sunday school song, but I'm having a hard time believing that God so loved me.
Yeah.
Same way, you know, we talk about neighbor in this like big general sense, and yet I don't actually want to talk to my actual neighbor or my coworker or my family, whatever that is. And I think the being compelled to action thing, that's where a lot of the table stuff came from. I think it was Paul Tillich. He said the first duty of love is to listen. I've just been so captivated by that idea that if we had a commitment to greater presence, both to God and others, like there's a guy named David Osberger. He says being loved and being listened to are so close to each other that for the average person they are almost indistinguishable.
Yeah.
I think that's really true, man, because think about the last time you had coffee with somebody who was there but not really there. Like they're checking their phone. Like that feels like, oh, man, I'm a burden to you and I'm not. Now think of the last time somebody was like dialed in and you can tell they're present with you. That feels like the presence of God, man. That feels like so for me, we had a buddy named Hugh Halter come out to our staff retreat last year, and he talked about kingdom work as archaeology. He says, we're never bringing the presence of God anywhere. He's like, God's already at work everywhere. Our role is to unearth, like an archaeologist, where is God already at work here in this conversation, and at this coffee shop, and at this restaurant. And so that idea of, you know, like what Brother Lawrence talks about, being in the presence of God, like it's being in two places at once. It's answering emails and in the presence of God, and driving to work and in the presence of God, and doing the dishes and in the presence of God, and coffee with a neighbor, and like that like learning to tending to God's presence in that way has helped make me more fully present. Yeah. Those that I just don't see I don't see coincidences anymore. Like, oh, this person's randomly behind me in line at Starbucks. Come on. I think there's value to this if I would just, you know, dial in and pay attention.
Hi guys, the Rethinking God with Taco podcast and community is having such an incredible impact in joining the dots up for people around the world. And my name's Paul Golf. I've been on the podcast, got to know Jason a little bit over the last year, and I just want to really endorse the value and the integrity and the grace of God that is working through this ministry. And I want to encourage everyone to think about how you can support this. Ministry isn't free. We do it because we love it. We do it because we're called to do it by God. But we want to make it possible for others to do that kind of ministry with us as well. And if you sow into Rethinking God with Tacos, it supports Jason, it supports his family, but crucially, it helps to send him and send this message to more and more people around the world. So I think that's a great investment. So I really would love to encourage you to think about how you could just help to keep the wheels turning on the truck, so to speak, for these guys. Thanks for listening, and God bless you.
Bro, thanks, man. I'm thankful. I'm thankful for all the relationships, connections, and I'm thankful for all those who've given. Rethinking God with Tacos is listener supported. If you'd like to support us, you can go to familystory.org. Again, we're a nonprofit. And I would encourage you to join us on our Facebook group. Follow us on Instagram, all the socials. If you're curious how to find me on the socials, it's at Jason Clark is. Otherwise, like, share, write a review on iTunes or Spotify. Tell your mom. We really are loving doing this, and I'm so thankful for everyone here. All right, it's time to get back to the podcast.
Would you think that I'm just with what you're saying about loving others? Do you see a correlation in when it says love yourself as or love? I'm the worst about scriptures. Okay, what we just said, but all I can think about is like if I don't know how to love myself, I'm definitely not going to be able to love anybody else.
Yes.
In the way that I think I'm loving myself, I'm going to be doing to others as well, but it does not really translate because I think I'm loving myself.
Yep.
I think this is self-care.
Yep.
I think I'm, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But if we don't feel deserving, you said something about the hearing, being heard and loving as together. There are 7 desires of our heart, and the need to be heard is one of them.
Wow.
And need to be heard, need to be seen. I mean, I don't need to go in all of them, but it is so true. But I think it goes hand in hand on your own view of yourself and how you view yourself, or how you take on others who put their view of you on you, if that makes sense, what I just said.
Yeah, absolutely.
So tell me what you like in that thought process, in that vein. What are your thoughts about that?
That I think is a brilliant question. And again, just to reiterate, this is not an area of strength
it's great. It's just conversation.
Yeah, I have certainly not arrived. I think I think I have skipped over that as yourself part for a lot of my adult life. I think a lot of people have too. I think well-intended acts of service and love to others in many ways was an attempt to like fill this vacuum, this like gaping hole, like never feeling like you're enough. So I guess I'll just keep, pouring myself out. And we take the Bible sometimes, and I don't want to get on this soapbox, but like, oh, you need to, take up your cross and follow him. So it's like dying to yourself. So yourself doesn't matter. I'm like, I don't think that's what that passage means. And so we tend to cherry pick and build an entire house of cards around like one particular concept. We're like, well, it says take up your cross and follow me, but it also says like be still and know that I am God. So what do we?
Yes.
Those seem like they're opposing. What do we do with that? And for me, I had to like finally allow myself to what we call going below the line of shame, and all of the fears of like, boy, if you knew how much I struggled here. You wouldn't look me as your pastor or leader anymore, or you would lose respect as a friend. It was like the scariest step is actually pulling back that veil a little bit. And the most freeing thing is they go, yeah, me too, man. Like,
yes,
it seems so elementary. This is why I think like confession is such a lost thing in like Western evangelicalism, because it feels too high church or liturgical or whatever. There's something though about saying to another person, like, hey, I just need to speak something that I know I've been like entertaining that's toxic, and to like receive the love and grace and forgiveness from another human. I don't know. There's something really freeing to that. And that's helped me along a journey of, how do I love myself in a way that I can't give what I don't have. So if I'm, if I'm working 22 hours a day, 7 days a week, I'm not being a great husband or father, and I'm certainly not being a good friend. So how do I reconcile Jesus who is regularly stepping away from the crowds who have a
Yes.
lot of legitimate needs still. They want one more healing, one more miracle. And he's like,
Just one more.
nah, I got to go be with the Father. And I'm like, okay, of all the people who could have had a Messiah complex, Jesus doesn't seem to have one. He's just like, all right, Jesus, I got to know. Like, that was like a light bulb for me. I'm like, he's got a way better work ethic than I do.
Well, and that segues another thought I had, unless you have something, Jason. Okay. Another thought I had, because in a lot of your vernacular and even the stuff I see on Instagram, all of it, I see your desire to operate from a place of rest, not to a place of rest. And then when you're talking about spiritual formation, some of the things that you're even saying is speaking of that. Can you speak to that for a moment? Just the idea of operating from a place of rest.
Yeah, I mean, if you go all the way back to the beginning, which I think is a good place to start, in Genesis, Adam and Eve's first full day was not a day of work, it was a day of rest, which means I think we work from rest, not the other way around. And I had a pretty convicting conversation with a buddy years ago. I was the Sabbath guy. I was really good at guarding the Sabbath for 24 hours. Back when, phones had batteries you could take out, I was like unreachable for a whole day. I was sort of like just trying to be like a monk about it. And my buddy, who's just the most like gracious soul, he goes, "Hey man, I love your commitment to Sabbath and like guarding that." He goes, "But I watched you the other 6 days of the week and you're killing yourself."
Yeah.
Goes, "Is that what Sabbath is all about?"
That's good.
He had me pegged entirely. And it was around that same time that I had a mentor. He said, "Ian, does your pace of life look like that of someone who actually wants to hear from God?" And he knew the answer to that question, but it was like it was like just being cut open, but like in the best, like the way a spirit, okay, that cuts, but I think we're getting to the root of some of these things. For me, I tend to love to swing for the fences. I love like big romantic gestures. I love big birthday surprises. I struggle a lot of times just like doing the dishes or vacuuming, and so for me, I had to learn to build in like micro habits even. So it's like, I'm going to be the Sabbather. I'm going to go on a sabbatical and it's like, why don't we start with just your Tuesdays? Why don't you? So like when I pull in the driveway at home, I power my phone off until my boys are asleep.
Yeah.
That's not that big of a commitment, but I don't want them to hear the sound of my voice without also seeing the whites of my eyes. And so my commitment to presence is like a micro discipline of rest and presence. That doesn't sound anything, but it's like the more I can make some of those choices, like, I don't know, it feels like a muscle that's like growing slowly over time. Like, I think I'm getting a little better at this being present or not reaching for my phone first thing in the morning, or, those things that have led to much of my insatiable appetite of pursuit and accomplishment and achievement and all that. And so it's Eugene Peterson calls it a long obedience in the same direction. That's kind of what I'm chasing after.
That's a beautiful thing. Have your kids called you a screenager yet?
They're too young, but I'm sure they've thought something similar. I'm sure it's there somewhere.
If I'm ever on my phone, and my kids are older, they're all almost adulting. My youngest is about to be 18, but she loves to call me a screenager. Like at the moment I pull my phone out, she's like, screenager.
That's pretty clever.
That's pretty good. Yeah. So they got me. I love that intentionality. I'm writing on a particular subject right now, so I talked about it a good bit on this podcast because you're always kind of talking about the thing you're running at.
Yeah.
But I'm fascinated by the fact that Jesus slept in a boat in the middle of a storm. That kind of rest is to me the gospel, because especially growing up in the charismatic church, where it was all about calming the storm, and all of our teaching was focused on what it looks like to bring heaven to earth and how we have authority, and a whole lot of that authority was built on striving and trying to get to, so for me, everything you're saying resonates in that somehow Jesus, if he only and always did what he saw the Father doing, then in this moment the Father was taking a nap, and that to me that settles my heart.
Yes.
Because it means that no matter what's going on, there is a place in his heart where I can rest at all times. And we're all coming into that journey. I don't know if you got thoughts on that, but I that's what resonates in my heart as you're sharing.
I mean, yeah, again, to the Genesis account,
I love that.
The thing that I had to wrestle to the ground was, if God rested and the universe didn't fall apart, is it possible it won't happen if I do? Like, am I so self-important that, like, well, that's good that God had that kind of free time, but I got a church to run. You're like, bro, you need to, like, even the sleeping in a boat example. There are two examples that I can think of in the New Testament where someone says to Jesus, "Don't you care?" Right? One is in the boat, don't care, we're gonna die.
Yeah.
The other is Martha, right? Martha's frantically doing, and Mary's just chilling at the feet of Jesus. And both times, the accusation, "Don't you care?"
Yeah.
I'm like,
oh, that's good.
How easily tempted I am by the cries of the crowd. Don't you care? How are you possibly taking a day off? How could you possibly turn your phone off when I need to get a hold of? Don't you care? I'm like, oh, that is a narrative that I can very easily do. And I realized for myself, man, if busyness is your drug, then rest will feel like stress.
Yes.
If busyness is the thing that I do to medicate or to, like, keep myself from feeling other things, then even if resting is the right thing to do here and now, it might not feel good at first because your body psychologically is going through some kind of withdrawals.
Yeah.
And that's what I don't think enough people are prepared for, is they assume I need to go on a silence retreat and that'll, like, somehow restore what's in me.
It'll be better.
Boy, if you're still addicted to accomplishment, it's not going to enjoy a walk in the park for a minute. That's going to take a second, you know?
That's very accurate. And the thing is, too, is I think even in that, what happens is all the thoughts and emotions you've been ignoring come up because you're not busy now doing anything else, especially in nature. I tell you, people should go camping so much more, and not glamping. I mean, like, go out there and camp where you don't have signal, you know, and get out in nature. You're going to hear God very clearly. Not that you can't hear, like, what we're doing right now, but even it's just the idea of, like, not knowing how to process your emotions, not knowing what to do with those thoughts that are all coming up now because you're not busying yourself with other things. People don't know how to just be. Because they don't have the tools to do all the stuff now with everything that's going on in their thoughts.
Right.
And that's a huge thing. That's a thing that I see a lot of. And people don't have the tools.
Right.
But they don't realize they don't have the tools because people around them are celebrating their busyness.
Right.
And it's just like, it's just this interesting circular thing going on.
And now we're talking to Brooke's heart, because Brooke provides tools.
I love it. Thank you for providing tools. That's honestly some of the tension that I feel in preaching, because I came to the place where I was like, I think I'm one inspiring story away from changing my life. The vast majority of people that I meet with legitimately want to change, but the lament of their heart is like, I don't know how. Like, I cried at the end of your sermon, like everybody else. I was moved by and then work on Monday, the same guy. I don't know how. And this is where I think we've lost the plot a little bit, because if we talk about things like tools or training, there's a whole camp that will like decry like legalism. And I'm like, I don't know. It's still love, grace, mercy, forgiveness.
Yes.
And then there's this don't be conformed to the patterns of the world, but be transformed. Like, okay, great. How do I do that?
It's the Hebrewic way. It's like when the phrase is like, have more faith. Okay.
I can't take that anymore. That's
thank you.
Frustrating to me, because some of the most faithful people I know.
You just need to believe.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, there's so many phrases that I'm not going to go with all of them, but you get the point.
I sure do. Absolutely.
It's like, okay, but then how? And then when you ask the how, they can't tell you.
Right. Yeah. I love it, Brooke. I love
Sorry. I could talk about that for a long time.
I'm here for it.
And I agree that the preach has been huge for me. So, you know, if we're coming back full circle to that conversation, I mean, I've had profound insights and revelations that then become practically worked out. But yeah, I am grateful for all the ways that at least in some of the streams that I'm connected to, we are more open to counseling and more open to all of the different ways that we can access tools. What are you on the Enneagram, by the way? I'm just curious.
I was going to ask that.
Oh man, my least favorite.
I have a thought.
Question. You have a thought? Should I ask you to share first?
I don't know. I don't want to be wrong.
I'm the worst one, if that helps you at all. I'm the worst number.
The worst number.
Yeah.
Only a 4 would say they're the worst number.
I'm a wing 4. I'm a 3. I'm a 3 wing 4.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So you wing 4.
I certainly do. That's in there. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Awesome. Yeah.
The extravagant, all the big things that you want, the romantic, yes, all of that.
Well, when we first did a training at my last church, when we did a whole full day workshop, and she was walking through each of the numbers, and the way she described the 3 was the salesman and the chameleon, and I was like, gross and gross. That is and then she was like, well, a lot of pastors are, because they're salesmen for Jesus. And I was like, yuck, 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 yuck. No,
yuck.
Yep.
But I have noticed some of those, like that's what's been really hard after, because I just got thrust into leadership so much earlier than I anticipated. And the chameleon nature of like, I'll fees often become what they think the room demands or what it wants.
Sure.
You spend a lifetime doing that. There's a party that's like, I don't actually know
who you are,
what I do like, or who exactly. I just got so used to adapting. Yeah. And that can be really dangerous in leadership, because you are just sort of shape shifting. And so it's been a journey of, it's okay, like you were saying, to love yourself. It's okay to say, I don't like that band. I don't, or no, I don't want to go to that event.
Well, it's funny.
It's okay.
You said the 3 and the chameleon, because the 3, when it goes to stress, it does become a 9, which is called the chameleon. And so they tend to hide in the way of like, I know all the perspectives going on, and I'm going to agree with all the perspectives going on and make sure you see them all.
Yes.
I brought it up because we were talking about tools, but I'm probably a 4 with a 3, but I always joke that I'm whatever it is that promptly forgets after they take the test.
Yeah.
4.
That's me. And your take too, because the first time I was introduced to it, I was given the negative, and I'm like, man, I don't want to.
Right.
I don't like that at all. But it has been a helpful tool, and one of the things that helps folks rediscover who he is and who they are in him. And so,
Totally.
I want to ask you. Sometimes we get to this, sometimes we don't. If you and I and Brooke, if we were all, which we're doing it, but if we were face to face having a coffee or better tacos, and we'll get to the tacos in a second. You promised to tell us your taco story in Spanish, so I'm excited about that. But if we were to get together and I was to say, hey man, what is the thing God's showing you right now where you're rethinking? What is the thing that's burning in you? This rethinking God with tacos, it really is, he's better than our last best thought.
Yeah.
And almost offensively so. I can't tell you how many times I've been offended by how good God is. And then I've had the opportunity, the joy to rethink or to repent or to shift and come into alignment with how he thinks first about who he is, and then about who I am, and then about my neighbor.
Yes.
And how that's transformed me. If we were sitting down and I said, man, what is the thing? What is that one burning thing or 2 or 3 that you were like, bro, this is the stuff right here?
Man.
Is it tough one?
First I would insist that we are at a table, just so that I could stay consistent with that. That would be of course.
That's fair.
And on brand, we're having tacos.
Perfect. Yeah. Yeah. I think lately I've been really compelled by this idea of mystery. If the Apostle Paul was comfortable saying of certain things, I don't know, mystery, then like maybe it's okay. I feel like in my 20s, especially like when I first started off preaching, there's so much self-imposed pressure to be like Bible answer man and to like hold everything so airtight. And it was like, I think it came from a good place. I wanted them to think I was a competent leader and that they made the right choice in hiring me and I know my stuff. And I look at like the spiritual giants in my life that I most want to become like. It almost is like as if as they age, they hold less and less. It's like they're sure of fewer things. And there's something so beautiful about that. Not that we don't still have convictions, not that I don't really think Jesus was saying when he said this, but this whole like, man, what's in my closed-handed versus my open-handed? There's fewer and fewer things. Like, what would it look like to live a life of like true curiosity of the mysterious? Like, what is God doing in this? I don't know what this could lead to. I don't know what the neighbor's going through. I don't know how to make sense of this weird, obscure verse in Numbers. Like, what do I do with that? I used to obsess over that. Like, I gotta figure out like every verse was a Rubik's cube, and I need to make all those line up. But I'm like, I think it's way more like a tapestry, and that to me is so much more compelling, And I think that's a lot of what we're seeing with, I don't know, when people talk about like deconstruction. Sometimes I think maybe we're pulling up the cheesy linoleum flooring to reveal the beautiful hardwoods that were there all along. Maybe that's what's happening. It's like,
that's so good.
This has been here for centuries. Why did we put Salty the Songbook on top? Why we didn't have to do that? Like it's. I don't mean to knock on Salty. I'm just saying the mystery and this like, Lord, help me to have eyes to see what it is that you're doing in my life, in my family, in my neighbor's life. Like, what do you want to do today? Like that kind of, like, I have my agenda.
So fun.
I have my plan. But like, 50% of Jesus's miracles were interruptions, like, Lord, am I even interruptible? Like,
that's good.
That's just, I want to lean into that. Like, yeah, I have a plan. I have an agenda. But at the end of the day, I want to be open to the fact that God might surprise me and others entirely. And I want to be tuned into that.
Come on, man. I love that, man. The hardwood floor analogy. That's so beautiful. We have a saying in our house, I don't know, but he's good. And and you can apply it in every area. He's good as Jesus revealed, if someone asks. But I don't know. There's so much liberty in that, man. That uninterruptible statement too, bro.
Yeah, that's good.
Thanks.
To be interrupted today with the things of God. You know what I'm saying?
Let's go.
I love it, man. I love that picture of deconstruction because to me, that's, there was a reactive thing happening in the church. I can understand that, but
sure.
But for me, years ago, we didn't get a say in being called Christians, and so I didn't get a say in the language around this particular shift. But I see it the same way you just described it. There's a whole lot of grace on it. That there are folks that are rediscovering early church fathers. They're rediscovering some of how the gospel was taught, our approach to Scripture, and there's some liberties around that. We've had a lot of these different conversations, but it's all in search of the cornerstone or that hardwood floor that's under this 2,000 years of linoleum and all the other stuff that's been put on there, all the facades that have taken away from the beauty and simplicity of God in Christ reconciling the world to himself, not counting our sins against us. And so, bro, I love that. That'll preach right there.
Thanks, man.
As they say, that's the burning. We are 52 minutes in, and unless you're like, we haven't touched the one thing that I want to touch, we've definitely got to go to tacos here.
No, and this has been great. I mean, I'm just going to keep talking if we don't wrap it up. So,
well, listen,
I'm having a blast.
Rethinking God with tacos. We put the tacos on for really a lot of the reasons that you described on the front end. This is relational theology. This is practical theology. On top of the fact that nowadays, when I travel places, people take me to taco joints.
Yes.
Love it. Love it.
And
That
then we
was
eat.
I didn't know what I was doing, but that was turned out to be a brilliant thing. So
your next show is going to be called God and Lamborghinis? Is that what you're
yeah.
That's smart.
You totally, you nailed it. Yeah, God and Lamborghinis. Taco story, brother. Good one, bad one, good, bad, ugly. You make them, you eat them.
Do you even like tacos?
Oh my goodness. Yes. I have a hard time trusting anyone that doesn't like tacos.
Come on.
Okay, fair.
This isn't like a story per se, but there was a taco place in the city that I went to school in and then got our first house in. That was the most beautiful place on earth to me. And by beautiful, I don't mean aesthetically. My particular jam is my favorite taco places are if the lights are flickering and all the booths have slices in them, and you may see an insect crawl across the, like that's my jam. But at the time, and it'll date me a little bit, you could get a burrito the size of a toddler for $2.25. And as like a poor post-college kid, I was like, that just makes good economic sense. And they were open 24 hours. So we lived up the hill
anytime.
And I just bought a moped for $85. And I would, on any given day, be 2:30 in the morning. And I'm like, well, time for tacos. And I would hop on the moped and zip on down. And that was just, that was like such a sweet, calorie infused season for me.
You were young though, so it didn't matter.
It didn't matter in the slight. And I remember we'd hired an interim pastor and they were living in that area. And they say, hey, do you have any recommendations for food? I was like, oh, yes. This is the best taco place. And so I saw them a week later and I was like, what'd you think? And they said, don't ever recommend a taco place ever again. I was like, what? And they're like, the lights were flickering. There were slashes in the booth. I'm like, yeah, those are the best features.
Right.
Those are the best.
Right. That's the aesthetic.
They were not having it. They were not interested.
I love it. I love it. Any taco is a good taco to me, you know. I was just on a road trip and I was taken to a place called Agave and Rye, which I haven't. I just gotta say, they were frou tacos. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But
I could piece that together with the name for sure.
Yeah.
With bourbon, though, right? Is that what it was?
It was. Everything about it was brilliant. They had kangaroo tacos.
Okay.
You know, but I at the end of the day, I'm just a simple taco guy. So the story you just gave is perfect, man. And
yes, sir.
That aesthetic's perfect. 2:30 in the morning is the right time to eat tacos. So yeah, that's a well told, approved story. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Hey, how do folks find you?
Oh, just come by my house. That's fine.
Yeah. So give us your address.
Come on over. We'll
go ahead and let us know.
Tacos and we'll
come on.
No, they can just Instagram is just Ian Simkins. They could always email me at church. It's just ian@bridge.tv, or you could go to bridge.tv and, see more about our church. Those are the only two places I think I'm really people. I don't know how you guys feel about this. I feel like there's a lot of pressure to also be on TikTok and do YouTube shorts. And I was like, I don't want to do any of that.
Yeah.
No.
It's the bandwidth.
No. Well, I think what you're doing on the Instagram is awesome, and also
thanks, man.
At the church, bro. It's been really cool getting to know you.
Likewise.
Fun to introduce you to the tacos community, and
yes,
I'm looking forward to the day we connect in person.
Let's go. Let's do it. It's truly honored to be asked. I appreciate it very much.
Appreciate you. Thanks for coming on the podcast, bro. Hey, guys. Thanks for listening to the podcast. If you'd like to learn more about the podcast, myself, or our guests, you can go to afamilystory.org. You can also go to afamilystory.org if you'd like to give. This is a listener-supported podcast, and we are incredibly grateful for your generosity. Hey, we have a Facebook group, and it's pretty cool. Rethinking God with Tacos. You can join us over there. Lots of incredible conversation and community taking place on that page. And you can also follow us on all the socials, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and others. Hey, I'd love it also if you went on iTunes and left a review or shared or tweeted or liked the podcast. Let your friends know that this is a good place to hear about the love of God. I pray grace and wonder over your day.